Hello, everybody. This is Nkosi with Two Sides of a Coin podcast. Also on the podcast is my co host, John. You want to say hi, John?
Hey, everybody.
All right. So, we're going to switch it up and we're going to talk about some things that we both enjoy. Uh, John is going to talk about food, while me and John are also going to talk about some movies. Specifically, we're going to talk about 5 movies that we feel, each of us for different reasons, but we feel deserve a sequel. And this time I can guarantee we each have 5 movies. We're not going to butt heads like last time. We checked. So you're going to get 5 movies from each of us that have various reasons as to why we are going and we want them to get a sequel. So, before we do that, John is going to talk about some food. So, John, take it away.
Yes, I feel really good about this, everybody. And the restaurant that I'm talking about that I feel deserved to be talked about again is Addeo's in the Bronx, a restaurant I've recently talked about that I've been to before for my favorite Italian cuisine. And I have to say, Addeo's is the place in the Bronx. Before I came across Addeo's, my favorite restaurant for Italian cuisine was Yolanda's. But Yolanda's closed, and it left me torn. I have to say, I went through a lot of places where I thought this would be my new go-to Italian restaurant, and those restaurants I will not mention because they failed my expectations. But Adios definitely met my expectations. So when you first walk into Adios, you're gonna immediately look and think, okay, limited seating, mom and pop pizzeria. But if you walk up the ramp to the back, where there's more where you will see more of the restaurant because out over there they have more open seating. There's a nice, well stocked bar, and may I say, the food is just muy mucho molto bene. I'm sorry, my Italian's not that great, and but it was definitely perfect. And that's my opinion, and other people that I've recommended to join me at the restaurant all say beautiful. Food is great. It's Italian, specifically family Italian restaurant, and they do. You can go there for catering. Just make sure if you want to have a party there, just make sure you call give them a good 2 weeks in advance and let them know everything you want for your party. They will definitely cut make a reservation, certain part of the restaurant reserved for you, and depending between if your party is 20 people to the max would be 30. And yes, I have to say I've tried a lot of the food on their menu. I One of the dishes I really liked the most was the chicken Alfredo. Really liked it. Was on point. I couldn't stress it enough. I even mentioned it in my last review. Could not stress enough how much I loved it. And the reason why I like Adios the most because you can also one of the things is that they reminded me it was similar to Yolanda's because Yolanda's had on point pizza, and I'm telling you, this pizza is brick oven pizza and very cheesy, very saucy. but not too much sauce. Not. I'm not talking about sauce that like once it'll fall off a little. No. This is on point, very well portioned, and yes, it is hot and very well priced. Very well priced. And I had an opportunity to meet up with the owner who also um not only looks over his restaurant, but also looks who takes responsibility in the social media part of the restaurant. He posts all the new stuff that Adios is bringing to the table, and you can find Adios on Instagram, just like if you wanted to look me up, you know, you can find Adios from the Bronx on Instagram. Very good restaurant. It's located in the Bronx on Morris Park Avenue. Its address is 1056 Morris Park Avenue, and on Mott Ave. No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm saying it right. Yes, Holmes Ave. And I gotta say, guys, it would be a perfect restaurant to take the family for Christmas or for after a christening, or even just to be with your family. This is a restaurant that you definitely would like to go to. You definitely want to go to, and I would want to stay relevant. You know, because there's plenty of Italian places in the Bronx, but there's not nothing that I feel could come close to Adios. And I highly suggest, ladies and gentlemen, do check it out. They're open Monday through Friday, and yes, they are also on. You can also find them on Uber Eats, Grubhub, Postmates, but that's kind of cheating yourself from the whole experience. You're better off going there yourself and sitting down, whether you're just having a slice of pizza, or just heading there, just take yourself to the back, grab yourself a table, have you a nice glass of sangria, and treat yourself. Really treat yourself, you know. Really treat yourself, because this is the Italian restaurant that I feel is definitely one people will be like, huh, have you been to Adio's yet? No, I haven't been there. Why have you not? So on that note, I will be giving this review a close.
All right. Thanks, John. So, we're going to go back into it. And as I said before, we each made lists, right? Now,
Yes, we
these
did.
now these lists were about the top 5 movies that each of us felt deserved sequels. Now, we made sure that we compared movies because last time we did about terrible reboots, and we butted heads a little bit. So this time it's going to be actually 10 movies. They will all be different. There is no overlap here.
No overlap.
So, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Um, I'll go first with mine. I really like my first one,
All right.
so
Well,
I'll go
go right
first with
ahead.
mine. So my first movie that I feel deserves a reboot, not just because of my remember berries. By the way, I'm remember very clean. Was Tron Legacy. Tron Legacy, directed by Joseph Kosinski, Music put together and composed by one of my favorite, Draft Punk, Guy Manuel de Home Crystal, starring Jeff Bridges and Garrett Hedlund. Also, Olivia Wilde. I feel strongly that Tron Legacy deserved. Tron Legacy was a good movie overall. Good movie. I love the story about it. Father, um, does his best to create a world for his son. You know, and in return, asks son to join him, but not um for son to find out his father has been going back and forth with his alternate self, who he at first assumed was going to be his partner in crime and breaking ground and creating a new world. But it came to bite him in the butt, and he went into war with himself because his other self wanted to also taste what his creator has tasted. He wanted to be out into he wants to go out into the real world. So I feel strongly that Tron Legacy deserves a sequel most definitely, because the ending had me like questionable. In the end, if well, hopefully everyone's seen it. You see him leaving the game store with Olivia Wilde on the back of his motorcycle. That gave me too many questions. That just popped too much conspiracy into my head. Like, hmm. So is the father's alternate side destroyed? Did I feel he's somehow may have lived to the point I would really like to see a sequel. Really would love to see a sequel. And it's been since like it came out 2010. I mean, we've gone. It's definitely in deserving of a reboot, but not a reboot, but definitely in deserving of a sequel. And if people in Disney are listening, please do a sequel. Tron, please, Tron 2. Please do a Tron 2. So, Kennedy, all you.
Well, the first movie I'm going to talk about is, and just to give you guys a heads up before you hear the movies that are on my list, every movie that I'm going to tell you about, they only got a single movie. All of them, I think, actually deserve a sequel, not a reboot, not a reimagining. I think you could all do these great as a sequel, keeping the original movie in place. Also, I just think they're all good movies that end in a way where either it begged for a sequel or you could easily see where the sequel could come from. So, the first movie I'm going to talk about, not any lead up to it, is the 2017 version from the very popular franchise, The Power Rangers. Now, this was the reboot to the Power Rangers movies, where they were going to do, the entire cast was going to not come back, but they redid everyone from Zordon to Rita to all five Power Rangers. And you've probably seen some of these people in other movies, like I believe Naomi Scott, the Pink Ranger. She was in the last Aladdin movie. You know, R.J. Seiler, the Blue Ranger, he's been in some stuff. Everybody, actually, all five of the Rangers have been in other stuff and been pretty good in that other stuff. The movie was well done, it was well made, and most importantly, it ended with a great stinger for a sequel to it. For those of you who don't remember, the stinger to it was the they were all in detention, and they called out Tommy Oliver, who for big Power Rangers fans would know, Tommy Oliver, who sadly the person that played Tommy Oliver, he passed away this year.
Rest in peace.
So rest in peace him. Uh, he was the new Green Ranger was going to be in the sequel. Now, this movie didn't do as well at the box office, so I understand why it didn't get a sequel. But the story itself was solid. I mean, Bryan Cranston was Zordon, Bill Hader was Alpha 5, Rita Repulsa, as I mentioned before, was Elizabeth Banks. And they were all great in their roles, and the five Power Rangers were really good in their roles. This was a solid movie. It had the same problems though as the movie Edge of Tomorrow, in that if you saw the trailers and you weren't really uh, impressed by them, or you weren't a big fan of the Power Rangers, you looked at the movie and you wrote it off and you said, this has all the hallmarks of a bad movie. But when you actually sat down and you saw the movie, you said, oh, this is actually a pretty good movie. This is actually much better than I thought it was going to be. It was one of those movies where the trailers undersold how good the movie was actually going to be. It doesn't happen very often, but like I said, it's just like with Edge of Tomorrow, where the trailer undersold how good that movie actually was going to be. So, I think this movie is going to, if it did have a sequel, obviously you'd feature the Green Ranger. You could feature new enemies. You could feature Lord Zed could come in there. You could have another Power Ranger group come in there. There are so many options that you could do for a sequel to this movie that I feel just doing a sequel would be an amazing job. And yeah, I mean, I really want to see what the next iteration for these group of Power Rangers would be, even though it's like 5 years after the fact. But I really would love to see what that next iteration would be like. So, John, how about you talk about your second movie?
So, my second movie that I'm going to talk about is the movie Wanted. Now, the movie Wanted stars, movie Wanted takes place back in 2008, starring James McCovery. Wow, I'm butchering this guy's name. You all will know him as Professor X from the movie X Men, the new like new class, yeah. Angelina Jolie, which you know from Eternals, the movie Kennedy, my co-host has definitely stressed about, and Morgan Freeman, Common. Now, why I feel Wanted deserves a sequel was not just based on how the ending ended. I really like the story. It talks about, a son um who didn't really have any real like knowledge, like really not a great relationship with his father. That's what actually really drove me to the seeing this movie because I didn't have much at the time. Me and my father didn't have much of a relationship, too much. And after seeing this movie and the ending, that ending where he says, I'm taking my I'm taking control of my life. That was just iconic to me. And when I had seen that, I immediately was like, they got to do a sequel to this because I don't even want to see a prequel. I want to see a sequel first. I wouldn't be mad if they did a prequel to the Wanted movie, but I 100% feel they have to go with the sequel first because I mean, the dude ended on literally like ending like he finishes where his father. Not only does he finish where his father left off, but like just the sequel telling like how he showing how he did take over his life. What did he do? Did he did he stop and like by did he go to blows with every person that he stated in the ending that was on his list? Did he go back towards the friend? Did he go first? To the cheating ex-girlfriend or the friend who stabbed him in the back? I would like that to be included. I would like to see if that is touched on in the sequel, you know. And I feel that it left me on like a cliffhanger, because you say you're taking control, taking over your life with that one single bullet into the brain of the person who had orchestrated your father's end. Like, what else are you doing that in a way of taking back your life? Because you just got this major upgrade. You got turned into a badass contract killer, and oh, excuse me for saying badass, but you get this contract. You become a contract killer, and you become so awesome. You become your greatest self. I would want to see a sequel to that. Like, I mean, yes, I want to see a sequel. Wanted. I mean, it's been since what 2008. I mean, at first I assumed they would have did a Wanted sequel around 20. Well, no, it wouldn't have been possible, but maybe a sequel like 2018. You know, or I was expecting a sequel. Shoot, I expect to see talks about a Wanted too, but have not heard anything just yet. So yeah, I feel Wanted would have a good sequel. The storyline was on point. It would be, and a lot of the actors moved on to bigger and better things. We've seen Common in the John Wick 2 movie. So yeah, I would be really interested in seeing like what was next in store. That's my number two, Wanted, Kennedy. So what's your number two?
All right. Well, my number two is a little bit older. It came out in 2005, but the guy that's the main lead in it, number one, he really wants to do it again. He was great in the role, and he does not look that much older than he did then. And of course, I'm talking about the very still youthful looking Keanu Reeves and his 2005 movie Constantine. Now, for those who don't remember Constantine, the movie, John Constantine was about a DC character who primarily is in the supernatural. He's kind of an a hole. He is very good at his job and he fights mostly for himself, but ostensibly he's on the side of humanity. The movie that I'm talking about, it had a Rachel Weisz in there who played two characters who were twin sisters, had Shia LaBeouf
Mhm.
in there, and it also had
Yeah.
Jaimin Hansu. So the real big reason why I want a Constantine sequel is mainly because Keanu Reeves was a great John Constantine. He really got the essence of the character, who was this hard living guy who just so happens to know a lot about the supernatural. Also, he said in interviews several times that if there's a character that I want to go back and play, I would want to do John Constantine because he really liked the character. Also, the reason why I would want a sequel is because while the movie was, I thought it was really good, it
Oh,
only
it was.
touched on so much of John Constantine's story, as well as you could have done so many other things with Constantine. He's attached to
Hmm.
the mystical side of DC in a way that very few other characters are. So he's the perfect tie in character for Supernatural, I think. He is essentially like Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat. He is the perfect audience stand in, where even though this guy has so much knowledge, he's a person that can be heavily related to. Also, I would love to see a DC property where they touched on some of the other mystical sides on the live action side, the mystical side of DC. You can talk about Zatanna, you can talk about Deadman, you can talk about Etrigan. You know, there are so many very DC characters on the supernatural side that have never really been brought
Hmm.
to live action in a
Yeah.
consistent and meaningful manner, that Constantine could really be that outlet. And it doesn't need to be connected to
Yeah.
anything. It could just be its own thing. I think Constantine would be a perfect sequel machine in that you could cast people and just say, yes, the 2005 movie happened. Here is where we're at with Constantine now in his story. And I think it would work
Hmm.
really, really well. Yeah, that's my second movie. So, John, what's your third movie?
Oh, my third movie. Well, my third movie relates. Maybe some of the people ain't listen to like this movie, but my third movie is Jumper. Also came out in 2008. It's a movie about a boy who um, comes into finding out that he has the ability to teleport ability to teleport as long as he's seen the picture, he knows it, he can be there in a flash. I feel this movie definitely deserves a sequel with the way it ended, where he goes, being that the story is based off of, also, sorry, left out a couple parts. The story was a good story because it's based on a child who didn't, like, similar to the Wanted movie. He didn't have a really didn't have a relation with his mother. Grew up his whole life with his the rest of his life with his dad, all the way up till until he discovered his powers. And his mother, who basically is pretty much his enemy, being that his power is something that um just can destroy, kind of puts tears within the world into the, like, little mini black holes, and if they're not closed properly, it could cause drastic things. So in the movie, it talks about this boy and how others like him are like a nuisance to society, and how this group called the Paladins are a group that was put together to capture and stop the jumpers from doing living their lavish lifestyle, being that they assume that their power has no consequences. It stars Samuel Jackson, a whole bunch of other A-list actors, and I do feel this movie definitely deserves a sequel, not just because of the ending where the boy finally confronts his mother and gets the gist of why his mother left him behind with his poor drunk of a father, and he teleports with the girl away with the girl of his dreams. So I honestly feel that movie deserved a sequel. Definitely deserves a sequel. I like the story, and if it was to do a sequel, they would. I'm assuming they would be talking about like more why the mother left him. Um, what hardships did the mother go through leaving him behind? And if they were to do a sequel, I mean, I guess it would be like what? I mean, I'm assuming it will talk about more of more of the construct of the paladins, and a sequel. I would like this. I'm guessing the sequel could consist of maybe the end of the paladins, or maybe the paladins and the jumpers coming to a common ground and working together. So I definitely would like to see a sequel again, and I would like them because there was a lot of characters I felt didn't have a lot of screen time. Being that the mom, we didn't see her much until the ending, and how the other jumper that he meets up with, he just talks about how he met all these other jumpers. So I mean, for them to do a sequel and clear up all the other little notes that they left in the first one, I feel Jumper definitely deserves a sequel. Definitely does. And that's my number three.
All right. Well, I can honestly say I didn't know about uh the whole oh they open up many black holes so that way they could destroy society. I don't remember any of that. So you
Uh,
learn something new every day. I only remembered the religious stuff that they were talking about. I, but that's just me. I didn't enjoy
uh,
Jumper that much. So
man, I really enjoyed it.
yeah, but I just didn't remember any any of that. But I'll go into my third movie, which I did enjoy, which was the 2012 remake of Dread. Now, for those of you who may remember the name Dread, you're probably thinking about the Sylvester Stallone movie by the same name called Judge Dredd. And it's based off this popular comic series about this dystopian future where most of humanity is packed into these small places that they call megacities. And in order to stem the tide of rampant crime that happens, they need to enact this new form of law enforcement where cops are on the streets, where they are judge, jury, and executioner. So that way they don't need to really uh, go in and do a lot of trials because the entire system has fallen apart. Now, on one hand, I think about this movie and I think about uh, Black Lives Matter. I think about the stuff that happens with real life police, and I really probably shouldn't want to see a sequel to this movie. However, as an action movie, it was so good. And I know it takes place in a dystopian future, so if somebody starts talking about Judge Dredd in real life, I'll shut them down. But if we're just talking about the character, I'm more than happy to see a sequel. Carl Urban, who played the new Judge Dredd, was perfect. I did love that in the movie they never really took off his helmet, how he was just Dread, simply because in a lot of movies they want to go and have the character remove their helmet or not wear their helmet as much so that way you could get to see the actor who of course is a beautiful person. And in this movie they were trying to be very very close to the source material, which was you don't see Judge Dredd's face, and that's it. You just don't see it, and I really did like that about the movie. I thought megacities are a great environment to tell stories. The Dread movie took place in this one huge housing block where it was Judge Dredd versus a whole bunch of other people, as well as Lena Headey character of Mama, who, if you remember Lena Headey, she was the queen in Game of Thrones, and she was great in that movie. I did love how at the end, and this is a decade old movie at this point, so I don't care about spoilers. I do love how at the end of the movie he has her take a hit of her drugs before kicking her out of a window. And I was like, that's mean, but also pretty badass, let's be honest. So I think I'm with everyone else who says the coolest part about Judge Dredd, of course, is the gun. The gun's the coolest part of Judge Dredd. It's cooler than the character, it's cooler than every bit of world building they did. The gun that the judges have that only they can use, that can change its ammo type on the fly and never seemingly runs out of ammunition. That is, it's such a great story, and it won't take a lot to just tell another Judge Dredd story. You can just make a crime action movie, put Judge Dredd in it, make it in a mega city, and you have a Judge Dredd movie. I think it works incredibly well. I think you can wring a lot of interesting source material from this. You could add current commentary, or you can just stay away from current commentary entirely. It's your choice. The real big factor with Judge Dredd is that Judge Dredd is a movie where it is about this one guy against the slew of people who want to kill him and him taking all of them out. It's a classic power fantasy. It's a simple story, and I think it would make a great action franchise if they just stuck with it and if they gave it just a little bit more of a push. You could put whoever you want as the villain. They don't need to live past the movie because Judge Dredd, he's judge, jury, and executioner. You don't need to worry about, oh, what about due process? In this world, nope. You shoot at him, he kills you, that's it. So I really would want to see just the action movie of action movies featuring Judge Dredd jumping in there and really, really just doing it up, shooting people, and any new configurations they could come up with the gun. Like, you already got grenades or rocket launchers. You can do different things. You could be like railgun and just shooting people, because that's all Judge Dredd is. It's power fantasy. We can enjoy power fantasies. So I'm going to enjoy this power fantasy and really want to see a sequel to this power fantasy. So, John, how about you go into your fourth movie?
So, my fourth movie is the 1985 classic The Last Dragon, starring Ty Mack, RIP to Julius Carey, and also newly mentioned, um, who's also recently just passed away, is Leo O'Brien, Richie Green, the little brother, of Leroy Green from the movie. Yeah, he's passed away. R.I.P. to Richie Green. I feel this movie. I like this movie a lot. I mean, it was it was one of my. I would say it was one of the five movies I've martial arts movies that I grew up watching. One of my top five growing up watching was um this movie, The Last Dragon, and I honestly feel it deserves a sequel. I mean, really, really, Last Dragon 2 would be awesome. We could talk more on the lives of, like, what happened after, now that you got the glow. Oh, what's new? You know, who else is there? Somebody else destined to have the glow? You know, even if I wouldn't be mad if they did like a Last Dragon reboot. I would just, if they were to do it, I would like, I would like the plot to be like, maybe it could be like um a sibling rivalry, as opposed to how they did it, how opposed to how the original went, you know. And yeah, I mean, this movie I really liked a lot, storyline wise. Boy grows up in Harlem, learning martial arts, and one day at a movie theater just meets the wrong, just runs into the wrong group of people. And instead of, like, what happens to most people usually in Harlem, either join up with the wrong group, and your life just goes out of control, and you don't really have much control. Nah, it actually happened differently. He followed to his teachers, his sensei's teachings about nonviolence, and when to raise your fist, when not to raise your fist. And by him sticking to his teachings, he set a goal, the goal to obtain the glow. And I feel that that movie deserved a sequel. This movie deserves a sequel after so long, you know, after so long. Not a reboot, but a sequel would be nice. You know, I mean, I would like to see a sequel. I would really like to see a sequel. Like, I mean, who's the next person to glow? Like, who? Richie? Well, someone in the family is going to be Sophie, one of her kids. I would definitely like to see that, a Last Dragon sequel. Um, that is my fourth movie.
Well, John, I could understand that. I mean, that movie was on a lot in New York. That was like a Saturday afternoon special for a lot of people for a long time.
Hmm.
Oh,
I'm just hoping if they do a sequel, I get to. I would love to. As many times as I've seen Tom Mack at Comic Con, man, if I was to see him again, he's like, "Yo, they're doing a sequel to Last Dragon." I'll be like, "Can I be in it?" I know the chances of that is like really slim, but I can dream.
okay. So I think the next movie for me is one that I think is a lot like The Last Dragon in that it's very much a cult classic. But unlike The Last Dragon, this movie was definitely not seen as much. But I do think it has even more potential than The Last Dragon in terms of it being a sequel or a franchise. And the movie I'm talking about is a movie from 1991. And it was a Disney movie, and it was called The Rocketeer. Now, for those of you who have not seen or ever even heard of The Rocketeer, which, to be honest, it might be most of you, The Rocketeer was a movie in the 1940s, 1930s. It was made around the time, it was set in the time of around World War II. And it was based around this experimental rocket pack that was made by Howard Hughes. And it was found, well, it was stolen from Howard Hughes, but it was found by a guy whose name was Cliff. It was played by Billy Campbell. He puts it on. He's a stunt pilot. He puts it on. He starts to learn it. At first, he only wears it to save a fellow pilot of his, but then he's embroiled in fighting Nazis because the Nazis want the rocket pack so that way they can fly over and take over New York with their rocket pack soldiers. And I mean, it had Timothy Dalton as a great villain. Alan Arkin was great as Cliff's Q, whose name was Peavy. Jennifer Connelly was in the movie as Jenny, which is probably the easiest name change ever, going from Jennifer to Jenny. But this was one of those really fun movies, and the one thing it did remind me of is it gave me a serious Indiana Jones feel. And that's why I want to see a sequel with this, because the Rocketeer, when he's in his full getup, he's got a full mask, he's got a jacket, gloves, the rocket pack, pants, shoes, and when I see the Rocketeer, the first thing that pops into my mind is somebody who you wouldn't think of, which is Stan Lee. And the reason why Stan Lee pops into my head whenever I think of the Rocketeer is a quote that he said, which was, the reason why people identify with Spider-Man is because you never see what Spider-Man looks like. He's fully in a garb. You don't know who Spider-Man is. Spider-Man could be anybody. He could be your neighbor. He could be your delivery man. He could be the guy you walk down the street with, because nobody sees what Spider-Man looks like. And because of that, he could be anyone. And that was the power of Spider-Man. That's the same thing I see with the Rocketeer. Because he's in his getup, when you see the Rocketeer's getup, and if you look it up online, you can see what I mean. Once he's in his getup, you don't know what the Rocketeer looks like. He could be black. He could be white. He could be anybody. You could do a sequel where the movie happened and you could have somebody else pick up that same rocket pack and go on and fight evil. And they could fight Nazis, because Nazis are still the go-to for everybody, in that who is the fictional bad guy that we can beat up and nobody really is going to get angry? It's Nazis. And if you're the kind of person that says, well, I get mad at somebody for beating up Nazis, I honestly don't. Yeah, I think you should keep that to yourself. Just keep it to yourself. This is a pro-Nazi beat-up place here on the Two Sides of a Coin podcast. I don't need you to say, oh, I don't want to beat up Nazis. Nah, we're fine if you beat up, Nazis in movies and in television. We're okay with that.
Yeah, it's all good with me.
Yeah, so that's why I really like the Rocketeer, because just like with Indiana Jones, it could be another franchise. Just like with Zorro, where anybody could be Zorro, anybody could be the Rocketeer. So you could literally do a sequel to the Rocketeer, and I'll give this one to you guys for free in terms of how you could do a sequel. You could do a sequel with the Rocketeer where you have a young black aviator who finds the rocket pack. He meets up with Cliff, and maybe he puts it on so that way he can save someone's life. And after talking a little bit more with Cliff, or maybe Cliff was hurt and he can't put the Rocketeer pack on anymore, he suits up as the Rocketeer and he goes out there to fight crime. And not only fight crime in his city, maybe he'll eventually go overseas and fight crime. You could have the Rocketeer be a young black soldier in Europe who finds the rocket pack, puts it on, saves his unit, then puts on the entire getup and starts fighting crime in Nazi held Germany. Right there. That's already an amazing story. I would I'd pay money to see that story in theaters. And you can make it as campy as you want because it's set in a time when camp absolutely works. So I love movies where the idea of a sequel or the potential sequels are endless. And with The Rocketeer, I think if you did a sequel right, you could get such an amazing movie. And I understand why The Rocketeer didn't get a sequel, mind you. The Rocketeer came out in the same week of two big movies that came out in 1991. The first one was Robin Hood, the one with Kevin Costner, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. And the second one was the original City Slickers. So it's not like I don't understand why The Rocketeer got buried underneath those two movies. Those are both really good movies, and it's rare at the box office for there to be three hit movies that all premiere in the same week. That's incredibly rare. So I think if you gave this movie another shot and you did it with the right director, the right CGI, the right actor, and the right story, most of all, I think you could have the potential for an entire series based around this one guy, the Rocketeer, who puts on a rocket pack and punches Nazis or kicks Nazis. He can punch or kick Nazis, and it doesn't even need to be a he. It could be a she. You could play
Oh
off
yeah.
you could play off the fact that once the Rocketeer puts on their outfit, nobody really knows who they are, and they could comment about how I feel when I put on my costume, I feel like I can really be who I want to be because nobody's judging me for who I am or what I look like. When they see me, they see hope. They don't see Harriet or something like that. Actually, that's a bar. That's a bar. That's a bar. So I'm gonna go into the fourth movie. You, John, you go into your final movie while I write down that absolute bar that came out of me. Cause oh, that's a bar. That's a bar.
That is.
Yep, you go into
No,
yours, into your
just,
fifth
no,
movie.
just all bars. Our bars. No one are allowed after listening to this podcast to bite off our bars.
Yeah, that
Just
was
to
a
let you
bar.
know.
That was a bar.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a bar. But yeah, you go on to your fifth movie from a franchise that I absolutely loved. So go off.
Yes. So my fifth movie is The Stargate. Now, The Stargate is a movie that is literally iconic on all levels. I mean, it had everything, literally everything in it. So much. That movie had so much that they literally broke it into a television series. Now, I feel this movie deserved a sequel on all grounds. Don't even I mean literally deserved a sequel because after when it came to the television series, I mean I was just like, oh, they're doing a Stargate television series called SG-1. Okay. Yeah, the movie was badass. Loved Kurt Russell. Love Kurt Russell. I think anything Kurt Russell is in is just major gold. I mean, he's had some movies. He's had some movies. We're not going to bring that up. But when him in the movie Stargate, that just tickled me pink. I mean, you got Kurt Russell traveling intergalactically to an Egyptian-like world, and he's motivating a whole race about people they saw they've been worshiping, they've been idolizing, and for him to just come in like and be out of some gate and just say, "Yeah, this is not right. Y'all deserve better." I was just like, "Whoa, this dude is literally awesome." I mean, his character and the story alone was on point. And the thing about it is about that really brims out of me why I feel Stargate, because it branched out to so many seasons. We have Stargate SG-1, we have Stargate Atlantis, we have Stargate oh my goodness, man, the last one escapes me. Please don't escape me.
Stargate Universe.
Thank you. Stargate Universe. And if they were to do a sequel, I feel I feel they should definitely um continue, like, not continue like based off of the shows. No, I'm throwing way, like, they can add that, like, the story they had for the shows was good. It was literally like they were literally basically what they did was finish where the movie left off and did a whole continuation, you know? I mean, with James Spade in it, he was also in, not a lot of the original cast was in the show, but I mean, literally, Stargate deserves a sequel. It deserves a part two. We deserve to, like, I mean, they were good enough to bless us with with this movie. The least they could do is give us a sequel to this. I mean, you give us a movie, awesome. You were able to branch out a television, a very wide, a television show that has the ability to transcend through decades and build decades of fans. I feel definitely a Stargate sequel would be something that would, I mean, it probably be one of those movies that breaks the internet. I really feel it. It'd probably be a movie that would break the internet, or probably break everybody's train of thought. You know, I mean, literally. I mean, like, they could go. I mean, if I had to pick a season, I would wanted them to maybe start from. I would say they could, like, if they were to do a sequel, I guess they could probably do, maybe if I had to pick a season that I liked, I would say we can do like Stargate SG-1, and then the cliffhanger of the sequel would be um the beginning of Atlantis or Stargate Universe. So, whew, all these years, Stargate would definitely be a good movie, and the sequel would be great. The sequel would be great if they do it now, before we lose everybody that was in the original. I mean, they could even take people from the show and put them into the sequel. I have my selected few. I mean, I don't want. I'm just saying they should definitely do a sequel. I'm not going to say who should be in the cast or anything else. I just solidly would love to see a sequel of the Stargate movie, and I wouldn't even want them to just do a sequel. I think a sequel wouldn't be like. Do you think a sequel would be enough, Kennedy?
I mean, I love Stargate. I think I liked the shows and the stuff more than you did. Really, it would just be. It sounds like you want it like both ways, and I'm not sure how you're going to get that with the way you want the sequel to be done. Because it sounds like you want the sequel to be done where you want to ignore everything that happened in the show and do one with the original cast. I mean that's just. I mean, I guess that could work. I'm not sure how you could get that off the ground. I mean, with a good story, you can do anything. So I'm not discounting
Yeah.
it. I don't know how you could do one with Kurt Russell where he's in his 50s and Kurt Russell ain't no Tom Cruise.
No, 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 no.
I'm just
Not
saying
at all.
he's not no Tom Cruise. So yeah, I mean Kurt Russell, James Spader, they were in. I mean, I love Stargate. I truly love Stargate. I watched all the series. I watched all the seasons. Like I could think of a way that you could do it. It's to me it's just you would have to do it in the way of like a star like the new version of Star Trek where essentially they go in and they retcon everything.
Hmm.
You could do it. It just
Yeah,
it would have to be a really solid script to do that.
yeah,
I don't know. I think I would rather. I'm not gonna focus on it. I'll just say, hey, Stargate. If you want to do it, I think that would be really cool. I'm just not sure how many fans there are, people who love the movie more than they love the TV shows that have come out.
yeah. So Stargate is my fifth and my final movie. I do have one movie well, yeah, that was my one and my last movie is the Stargate. So on that note, I'm going to enter my Stargate and pass the baton to you, Kennedy.
All right. I appreciate that. Use your use your gate device so that way the iris doesn't close on you. Uh,
Nope.
okay, so before I get into my fifth movie, I'll mention two honorable mentions. So, first one is the movie Real Steel with Hugh Jackman, where he is training a fighting robot because they've taken over and replaced boxing. If you saw Real Steel, it had a lot of heart, had a lot of fun with it in regards to the relationship between Hugh Jackman and his son, the robot. The action scenes were actually real fun. So, also, it's a movie where Anthony Mackie plays a bookie, where he's pretty funny in it. So, I really like that movie. That movie begs for a sequel because the way it ends definitely leads you with, yeah, this could definitely be a sequel. The second one is a movie I kind of touched on a little bit in regards to Power Rangers, and that is Edge of Tomorrow, the Tom Cruise movie that came out with Uma Thurman, where he is a soldier that inexplicably gets the ability to relive the last day of his life.
Hmm.
That movie is so good. It's extremely solid. I really do like that movie. If you've seen that movie, you sung its praises. It was one
Oh
of those
yeah.
movies where people thought it was going to be bad, then people went into the theaters, the critics thought it was going to be bad, and when everybody saw it, they said, "Oh no, this is actually a really good movie. You should go see it." The problem is none of the press or anything like that did it any favors, so I only saw it because somebody literally told me, "Hey, you need to watch this movie. It is really good. I think you'll like it." And I said, "Okay." And I went to watch it and I said, "Oh, thank you. I love that movie. Why aren't more people watching that movie?" And it's one of those movies where just the marketing fall flat through no problem
Mhm.
with the movie. Uh, some people said it should have kept the name that it originally had, which was Live, Die, Repeat. Either or, not going to go too deep into it, but I do think that movie should also get a sequel, but
Oh yeah,
neither one
definitely.
more than the movie I'm going to talk about now, which is the 1999 sci fi genre classic Galaxy Quest. Now, hear me out here. If you've never heard
Okay.
of the movie Galaxy Quest, you're thinking, man, that sounds like a ripoff of Star Trek.
Star Trek.
And you're right. You are 100% right. It is. And that's the joke. It is a sci fi
Mhm.
comedy movie. It's based around a Star Trek like show that went in the 50s or 60s, where the cast are all old people now. The show did not last very long, but they're essentially surviving off of like the cons and everything like that, the fandoms that we all know and love. Where the main lead, Tim Allen, who plays Jason Naismith, he gets contacted by aliens because the aliens
Yep.
thought that that the movie Galaxy Quest was actually a memoir and not a TV show and not fake. So him and the crew get pushed into this whole thing where they are now in charge of a real starship having to save this
Yeah.
alien people from the bad guys. It is hilarious. It
Oh
is
yeah.
so funny. It's so poignant. It makes jokes about Comic Con and fandom culture that is
Mhm.
hilarious. Uh,
Yep.
at one point, he gives a communicator to one of the fans where he gets his communicator mixed up, and he's asking the fan information about the movie, about the show, because he
Mhm.
doesn't remember it. And the
Yeah.
fan's like, "Oh, yeah, you're in this part of the ship, which we know does this." And he's like, "How do you remember this stuff?" Hilarious. It is hilarious. Um, it had Tim Allen, it had Sigourney Weaver, it had the late, great
Ooh.
Alan Rickman. You know, it had Tony Shalhoub, Sam Rockwell was in there,
Mhm.
as well as
Yeah.
Daryl Mitchell.
Mhm.
And the great thing about this movie is it is rife for a sequel simply
Yes.
because you could have this group of people who are redoing the Galaxy Quest TV show, and
Mhm.
maybe they're interacting with their rebooted counterparts, the people who are going to take over and play the younger versions of them, and they're just consulting and passing the baton and everything like that. And then both groups get abducted again, and they have to deal with
Mhm.
another alien crisis. So now
Mhm.
the older group of actors are now having to walk these younger groups of actors through this whole thing of aliens are real. We've done this before. It's not a big deal. Yes, you can die. Just pretend like you're on a television set and you'll be fine. And
Mhm.
it could and the great thing is you could do it where at the end of it they rewrite the script and they make it where it's not a reimagining, but it's just with the original cast, and they are simply just out in the world. I'm telling you, the story writes itself. It was a great comedy,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh yeah, it really
I
was.
truly believe if you made a sequel to it, you could get so many laughs about sci-fi culture, about reboots in general, about sequels, about
Mm-hmm.
how Comic Cons and fandoms are and conventions. You could do all those over and over and over again, and you could get so many more jokes out of this. That's why this movie is just comedy gold.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, it is, never give up, never surrender.
Never surrender.
You will know what that is if you watch the movie. And while I am never giving up, never surrendering, we do have to end this podcast at some point. So,
Sadly, we do.
sadly, we do. So, John, tell people where to find you.
Well, you won't be able to find me with the glow anytime soon. But you can find me on Instagram at Fat Man Loves Anime NYC 21. And yeah, feel free to message me if you have if you want to talk about the restaurants that I've been to, or ask me a question about a restaurant that I could be going to. And I may have, yeah, you can ask me about that. Hit me up. Don't be a stranger.
If you want to find me, I would just say don't look for me
Yeah.
any other place, but you can absolutely look for me on the podcast. So you can find us at two sides podcast at gmail.com. That's TWOSIDEZ podcast at gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram on the Two Sides of a Coin Instagram. You can find us
Yes.
on Twitter at Two Sides of, or maybe not because Twitter is imploding so much as we speak. Uh,
Yeah.
you can find the podcast on Spotify as well as Podbean.
Definitely Spotify. Podbean also.
And hey guys, I hope you have a great rest of the week, and we will talk to you guys later.
Latest.